The main topic of conversation this week naturally continues to be all about Lucas Paqueta and the way the game against Liverpool ended, with the Brazilian picking up two yellow cards in quick succession for dissent. I'm not going to go into the full details, the fine details again of why he got sent off, but the outcome is that he will now face a further one-match ban and will miss the game away against Man United this coming Thursday evening. This is just after coming back from a one-match suspension against Bournemouth after picking up 5 yellow cards so far this season. Now he's got 7 yellow cards, and after this latest suspension, is just 3 yellow cards away from a third suspension this season. Look, everyone's got an opinion over Paqueta and his petulance. Most fans feel that he has completely let down his teammates, completely let down the fan base, and most of all, he let down Billy Bonds' memory on the day that Billy Bonds passed away. Now, the reasons he gave for his outbursts almost don't really matter. He should have known better. There's no denying that being under the spotlight for 2 years, whilst allegations of spot fixing were hanging over his head, will have taken their toll on the player psychologically, which is the reason he used for his anger and frustration during the game against Liverpool. If you recall, the frustration also came to the fore when he shed tears after being booked in the game against Spurs last season as well. Now, I don't think any of us can really understand just how Paqueta has been affected by what he's had to endure over the last 2 years. I guess everyone gets affected by things in different ways. But he needed to hold his nerve on the pitch against Liverpool last weekend, and the best way to right an injustice is to show what he could actually do on the pitch with his footballing skills. But he didn't take that route. Look, I actually do think the first yellow card was harsh. He didn't approach the ref and didn't seem to say anything directly toward him. He just threw his arms up in the air in frustration over yet another ridiculous call by Darren English in favour of Liverpool. Let's not forget that this is the same ref who was banned from refereeing any Liverpool games just a few seasons ago. So what's changed? How come he's allowed now to ref games involving that team? But if Paqueta may have felt a little hard done by with receiving his first yellow card, he was actually in full control of the situation, which led to his second yellow card, and it was avoidable. Still, it's done, and Paqueta will miss the next game. But what I want to focus on is whether we can survive without Lucas Paqueta, not just for the next game against Man United, but perhaps for the rest of the season as well. Because the inevitable focus now will shift as to whether Paqueta will stay at West Ham beyond this January transfer window. Does Nuno stick or twist when that window opens when it comes to Lucas Paqueta? And by that I mean, does he want to keep hold of him, or does he think now, after what's happened, he's a liability? Look, if we have a bid accepted for him, it could bring in a decent amount of money, which could go towards reinforcing the squad in this January window. But before we go that far ahead, let's focus on what Nuno is going to have to do this coming Thursday. Paqueta's suspended. We find ourselves asking the same question as we did before the Bournemouth game, and that question is, how do we best get ourselves set up without Paqueta, and can we demonstrate that we can do better without him in the team? Look, we proved that we did against Bournemouth, but in my mind, against Liverpool, if I just focus on that for a second, Paqueta was slowing the game down whenever he got hold of the ball. He wasn't always looking to make a quick pass. This is not the Paqueta style of play. He likes to take the ball, keep hold of it, beat a few players, show off his skills, and attempt the Hollywood pass, which, when it works, it's sublime. And when it doesn't, it's frustrating. All very well when you've got plenty of time on the ball, but that doesn't suit the counter-attacking way that Nuno wants to set up his West Ham team. Instead, he held on to it for too long at times, which lost our forward momentum, what little there was of it. If you look at how we played in the first half against Bournemouth, we had the ball more in the opposition box, especially in the first half, with the long passes, direct passes, especially from Areola, which led to the first goal by Callum Wilson. We went direct, and that's without having Lucas Paqueta in the team. So, when it comes to how we shape up against Man United, we're likely to see a similar setup to that against Bournemouth. And our defence and midfield is going to be instructed to get the ball from back to front quickly. With Somerville potentially out as well, Nuno will almost certainly start with Magassa, Potts, and Fernandes in the centre of midfield. And this time, he's likely to give Fernandes that free role just behind Wilson and just ahead of Potts and Magassa in a pivot. He may even have Fernandes almost alongside Bowen just behind Wilson, and I'll explain why in a minute. Because not only does Nuno have to sort out the problem of how to replace Paqueta again, he's also got the same issue of having to look at replacing Somerville. Now, he's tried Luis Guilherme, who, with the greatest of respect, I know people are saying he needs more time, he's young, etc., and I get that, but he's not a starter for me. I don't think he starts in this first 11 on Thursday night. So in order to keep the three in the middle, plus lend support to Callum Wilson up front through Fernandes and Bowen, I think Nuno will go with wing-backs so that he can push Malik, Diouf and Wan-Bissaka further up the field, and is likely to have Todibo, Dinos and possibly Kilman back in the lineup as a centre-back three. So a 3-4-2-1 or a 5-3-1-1 could actually suit the players available to Nuno down to a T. And if it works, if it proves to be successful, then the next question is what I mentioned at the start of the video. If we can cope without Lucas Paqueta for the Bournemouth game, and if we can also cope without him for the Man United game and get decent results, we got a decent-ish result. We gave it away against Bournemouth, but we still came away with a draw. But if we can get something out of the Man United game, does that mean that we can cope without Lucas Paqueta at West Ham at all? And if in that case, if we were to receive a decent bid for the player in the January window, would we accept it? Now, what would be deemed a decent bid? Look, we all know we're never going to get the £80 million that was on the table when Man City were willing to buy him 2 years ago. That ship has sailed. I'm not even sure we could get even 40 or 50 million pounds for him. Look, we paid 40 million pounds plus 12 million pounds in add-ons. That was the whole package agreed to what that we would pay when we signed Paqueta in 2022. I dare say he's probably made up that 12 million add-ons with winning the Europa League and all that sort of stuff. So let's say, for argument's sake, we have shelled out 52 million pounds for him, in addition his 150 grand a week salary. So if that's the case, if we have dished out around 52 million, what would we accept for Lucas Paqueta to agree to let him go? We're not getting 50 million for him either in the January window. I would doubt it very much. So do we accept no less than 40 million? And, if we do, we must consider letting him go. We certainly wouldn't consider a loan with an obligation to buy, because if Paqueta is to leave in January, we need top dollar for his sale, and we need that money right now, not in 6 months' time or whenever, when it's too late to use the money to help bolster the squad that we need to bolster now. But if Paqueta is to leave, then not only do we need to replace him, but we also need to not forget that we've got to focus on strengthening the squad in other areas as well. A transfer fee of 40 million won't cover 3 players or even 4 players that we would need in January. Look, if he goes, we need a Paqueta replacement. We still need another centre-back. We still need another striker. And quite possibly we need a winger to cover for Somerville, who continues to pick up injuries. But the likelihood of us getting 4 players this January, or 4 players who are actually right for the squad in January, is a tall order. We're almost certain to have to dip into the loan market in addition to looking at buying a couple of players. Now, 40 million from Paqueta, That should get us maybe two half-decent squad players, 20 million each. And then the saving of Paqueta's 150 grand a week salary coming off the wage bill will also help to pay the salaries of at least three players on roughly 50 grand a week each. And before you say, hang on a minute, 20 million pound a player plus 50 grand a week on salaries is not enough. Well, it depends on the type of players that we're targeting. If we're looking at players that are already proven in the Premier League, then yeah, I agree. There's no way we're going to get 20 million pound players and 50 grand a week salaries from players already plying their trade in the Premier League. But if we're looking at the European leagues or even the Championship, looking to step down the Championship, then quite possibly 20 million pound transfer fees for each player and a rough 50 grand a week salary should actually be ample. I think that's the way we're likely to go. But to generate any more money to buy players, more than two, from the 40 million that we might get for Paqueta, means that we're going to have to not only look at selling Paqueta, but we're going to have to look at selling the likes of Mads Hermansen, James Ward-Prowse, Andrew Irving, to name but a few. But it's easier said than done when you're saying about we should sell this, that, or the other player. You need a buyer in order to sell. And most of the players being mentioned at the moment, teams are looking at moving them on or getting them, should I say, on a loan basis. James Ward-Prowse to Leeds or Everton, they're not looking to buy him. They're looking to loan him for the rest of the season. Lucas Paqueta, Aston Villa are looking to loan him for the rest of the season. Andrew Irving won't bring that much money in. So we've got a problem here. Not only do other clubs want our players, they don't want to buy them. And that's another problem that will be an issue. And there's another problem as well. Lucas Paqueta, if he is to go, I'm not so sure he's going to want to stay in the Premier League because not only is he fed up with everything that's happened, he's fed up because it's happened here in England under the FA. The FA have allowed this to happen. So him moving to another Premier League club is not necessarily going to solve the issues, the psychological issues that he has. I think Lucas, if he wants to go and if Nuno wants to let him go, I think we're looking at a move abroad. I really, really don't think at any moment that Lucas Paqueta is going to go to another Premier League club purely because of what's happened here in the English League. But let's go back a step because having said all this, there's no way I can see West Ham United bringing in four players in the January transfer window, regardless of what happens. I think it will be a tall order, and it's likely to lead to even more panic buying in the same way that we've managed to panic buy in the past. I think what will happen is I think Nuno will have private words with Paqueta. He said he's going to have a private chat with him anyway. I think Nuno's going to encourage him to knuckle down until the end of the season, and then we bid him farewell in the summer. I think Nuno will also push hard to find a way of getting Edson Alvarez back into the side. Because if he keeps Paqueta on track, and if he does get Alvarez back, then all of a sudden, instead of needing four players in the transfer window, we're back to needing maybe two. And we're looking at what? A defender or a winger. Let's not forget, if Alvarez does come back, he can play in central defense. So maybe the need to go out and get ourselves another defender, another centre back, won't be quite as large. Maybe Nuno will look at a winger, but almost definitely a striker. One thing is certain is Paqueta has given Nuno a bit of a headache that he didn't think he would have to deal with. I think Nuno thought that when he came in, he was looking at the squad, looking at the likes of Lucas Paqueta and thinking, I'll build around him. That's the sort of player I need to build around. But it hasn't turned out that way. But maybe, just maybe, if Nuno can talk some sense into Paqueta, get him to sort of really focus for the rest of the season on his game, then maybe we can get through the season a little bit unscathed. Let's hope the private chat that will clear the air and will allow the player to get on helping West Ham to shift further away from the relegation zone. But once he's had that conversation with Paqueta, if Nuno feels that it's maybe time to part ways, then I think this might just turn out to be a blessing in disguise. because I actually do think that we can survive without Lucas Paqueta being in this West Ham squad.